We're continuing on Hilchot Shabbat, and we're starting the halachot of zorea, planting, and it's not just planting. Many things are included in the halachot of zorea, as we'll see. Hazorea zra'im or anotea ilanot, a person that plants, whether you are planting seeds or trees. Now, obviously, trees we could understand. Seeds is harder to understand. The Avnei Nezer, the Sachit Shavarav, writes in the beginning of, he's the one that wrote the classic work Iglei Tal on Hilchot Shabbat. In Hakdamat to Iglei Tal, he writes certain melachot you are chayav on Shabbat, even though that I haven't done much really. Like for instance, you put zera in the seed in the ground, and the Gemara already talks about this. When exactly this is considered legabe shvi'it, legabe maserot. When is it considered that this was planted? When you talk about Rosh Hashanah leilanot, Rosh Hashanah for zeraim, for instance, like it's not right away. But when it comes to Hilchot Shabbat, you put it in the ground, you cover it, you do what's needed to be done for it to be planted, and that moment you're over on Isur Shabbat. Even though that another 3 days nothing is going to happen necessarily, right? Still you're going to be hayav immediately at the time of Zri'ah. Then he goes through geshmak questions of what happens if I undo it now. So imagine an hour later after I planted it, I'm like, oops, today is Shabbat. I was not supposed to be doing this. And then you just uproot it, you uncover the ground, and you take the seeds out. Does that undo the Avera? Does that not undo the Avera? Right? Becomes very geshmak back and forth in Iglei Tal by Rabbi Avraham Misachichav, the Sachichav Rebbe. The Sachichav Rebbe was a son-in-law to the Kotzker Rebbe. He was a very geshmak and strong personality. I'll tell you 2 stories about him that my Shiur Zatzal Rav Ruderman said. It must have been a very young, like a 5-year-old, when one of the leading Rebbes was coming. You have to understand that this was the first generation of the big luminaries of Torah in Olam HaChasidut. All the first generation were Geonei Olam. We're talking about the Satmarav, and the Reb Chaim Sanzer, the Sanzer of the Kotzker Rebbe, and all these are tremendous people. So he must have been a little kid. He comes, the Rebbe comes, and all the Hasidim go to see him, and he goes there, tearing through the crowd until he gets in front of Rebbe. He's standing in front of Rebbe. He says, "What is your name?" He asks the Rebbe. So Rebbe looks at him and says, "Little kid, a chutzpah, like you don't talk to the Rebbe." Like he says, "You speak to the Rebbe like that?" You want to see what he says. A little cutesy, kid. So he looks at him directly in the eye. He says, "Well, you're bigger than Hashem. That I say Baruch Atah, right?" So the Rebbe says, "I'm muftachani that this guy, this kid is going to become something big." Now you want to see how big he became when he was in Shidduchim. When he was in Shidduchim, he was read to the daughter of the Sanzer Rebbe, Reb Chaim Sanzer. So he goes to Sanzer Rebbe. The minhag was that the father-in-law would test the potential son-in-law to see if they're a Talmid Chacham. So he speaks to him for hours and hours in learning, and he was very impressed. You could see from the writings of the Avnei Nezer what the Gaon he was. And he says, amazing, very good, but I want to do some more. I want to test you again tomorrow, so come back tomorrow. And he says to him, no, you get only one bite on an apple. Which is where the Sanzer Rav was very taken aback. So why? He says, think about it for a second. Why is it that the father-in-law, the potential father-in-law, gets to test the potential son-in-law? Because the Gemara says in Masechet Pesachim Daf Mem Tet that a person has to give everything he has in order to marry his daughter to a Talmid Chacham. So you want to make sure I'm a Talmid Chacham. But the Gemara also says a person should always give everything he has to marry a bat Talmid Chacham. Right? So you have to also make sure your father-in-law is a Talmid Chacham. So why is it that the father-in-law gets to test the son-in-law doesn't get to test the father-in-law? Right? It says, because Mistama, you're somech that his father-in-law gave him a faher. Right? His father-in-law tested him. So if you want to give me a second test, I have to give you a test too? Right? So the Sanzer Rav says, he's too sharp for me. Go to the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe was a very sharp personality. So Taka, that was like a shidduch made in heaven. He actually ended up marrying the daughter of the Kotzker Rebbe. But be as it may, that sharp mind, it's an amazing thing when you go through the different back and forths in the Iglei Tal. again, in the Chod Zorah is one of those examples. Says the halacha over here, it doesn't make a difference if it's a seed or if it's an actual plant that you're planting in. All is going to be chayav immediately. V'chen hamavrich o markiv o hazomer beilan. There are three other ways of plantation. One of them is markiv, that you actually graft a branch to another tree. You didn't do anything. You just took a fresh cut branch. I mean, there's a chokhmah how to do it, right? You have to peel off a thing and then strap it together. And so if you did that, you're also chayav, even though that you did nothing, but you just gave life to this dead branch that you had cut. That is considered part of Zoreh as well. And same is with a mavrich. The same is with so when you bend the mavrich, you bend the fresh branch and you bury it basically under the ground, and that also takes time, but little by little that fresh soft branch gives roots in under the ground when you have the right amount of moisture in the ground and so on. And little by little, it's called layering. Okay, so that also is considered plantation because that's exactly what it is. Now it takes a few weeks until it has a life of its own, but lemaaseh, that's also going to be chayav. If you do the action of layering on Shabbat, you'll be chayav for Zoreh as well. Because every single one of these, even if it's not effective right away, your kavanah is l'sameach davar, you want to grow something, and therefore you're going to be chayav. V'chayav mishum Zorah. This is a biblical level. We talk about chiyuv deoraita. Hazomeret ha'ilan kederech ba'alei akramim. If you're not actually planting, but you're actually shaving off extra branches, right? You're pruning the tree, so to speak. That also, because it's done in order to make the rest of it grow better, it's a whole chokhmah when to do it, which season to do it. The sap should not be coming out, but it should be beforehand. There's a whole chokhmah, which trees and when to do it. Therefore, even that, she'osim ken k'desh yisameach yoter, that you do it in order for them to grow better afterwards, chayav mishum zoreh. That also you're chayav. You're cutting, but you're chayav mishum zoreh, right? Says the halacha. Even if you didn't have direct kavanah for this to happen, because for sure it's going to happen, still you're going to be chayav. Now this is a little bit questionable. A little beyond the scope of this little talk over here, but you have to talk about davar she'eino mitkavin. Right? If my kavanah is not to do X, Y, and Z, so how can I be chayav for X, Y, and Z if I didn't have kavanah to do it? Right? L'chora it should be patur. We'll get to a little bit more of this as the sugya unfolds. But hamashke mayim lizra'im o leilanot, watering, providing hydration and water for the plantations also is a basic need of their growth, and therefore is considered part of the isur of zri'ah deoraita level as well. Toledet zoreh v'chayav. It's considered toledet melacha, and you're chayav. Hilkach ha'ochalim v'shabbat beginot or pardesim. Therefore, when you're in your backyard, right, when you're in an outdoor area, and you want to have a picnic, you're eating something, you're drinking something, you have to be mindful. Say you're washing it at time. This actually upcoming Chag HaSukkot is going to be very nogea. You're in the backyard or you're next to it on a cement, but it runs kind of like into the grass area, right? You have to be very mindful that when you are, well, that last case that I gave is less than simple. You have to. We're not discussing that yet. We're going to see that in the next few halachot. But certainly, if it's directly dealing with water being poured on the zra'im, you have to be very mindful. You shouldn't pour water on the zra'im that they need water. And the same is for other juices as well. Unless it's something, again, the Shulchan Aruch discusses whether or not, the Shulchan Aruch really discusses urinating on plantations. Is it good? Is it bad? Does it burn them? Does it destroy them? If it's something that it doesn't need the water, for instance, imagine if You've had 10 inches of rain just yesterday, and everything is like mud, is so much water. So that's not sarich lemayim. That's not necessarily the right level, even if you pour water on it, right? Because you're not doing anything to it. It may actually be detrimental because you're getting the process of nitrogen being provided for the roots, and oxygen too, for that matter. You're stopping that process, and it actually rots the root of the thing. So it's not really good. But again, you see, Chazal actually, they dealt with many of the scientific aspects of this thing, which again is not within the context and the scope of this talk. But Lema'aseh, if they need the water and you're providing it for them, for sure, it's a Torah melacha and it's asur. Hence, you have to be careful. Especially again in Chag HaSukkot and in Chol HaMoed. Shabbat Chol HaMoed, the people are around and about. That is something very important to be mindful of. Now, how about if you have, and this happens a lot also, you have a backyard, you have a sink in your backyard, but there's no real plumbing for the sink in the backyard, right? So it has make believe plumbing that goes around the corner, but it really ends up on dirt, or some people have it actually even in some of the offices, right, or back houses. They have, especially if the plumbing goes the other way around. So you don't want to do a whole new plumbing. So you have a sink inside the back house, but really it goes outside the thing, and it's like out of sight, out of mind. But really it's going on the grass outside. Is that mutar asur? So we said we're going to talk about this, right? This gets into a very complicated sugya of koach kochol, koach sheni, right? Indirect actions. So kior sherochasim bo yadayim. If you have a sink like that, you wash your hands, the water that you pour inside, right? He goes, and he pours into a karka zerua. You have a planted land with vegetation, with trees, whatever it is there. Chidush is, with all of that, it's still mutar to wash your dishes there, to wash your hands there, and we're not necessarily concerned about watering the plantations there, which is a grama that happens automatically. That's the nature of any grama, right? Through this water. So it's two things here. One is it's not direct, it's indirect through a grama. Secondly, your kavanah really is not to do that. You don't necessarily even care about it, right? It's not something that you're mindful of. It's not something that you want, and therefore it will be mutar. Now, this opens a can of worms of all the other sukkahs. I'll just give you one thing, even though that's going to be a teaser because we're not going to discuss it today. But imagine an apartment building, right? Imagine a house. Well, apartment building is a bigger and a better question. If you have the system, it used to be 60, 50 years ago even, it was different. They changed it because of the security standards. It used to be that when you had a water heater, the urn in the house, you could close the incoming water and still empty out the water inside, which would be absolutely mutar. Then you could have like hot water on Shabbat, chazak ubaruch, right? Aside from taking a shower with it and bathing in it, which is a different gezerat rabanan of gezerat balanin, you could use the actual hot water for washing your hands, washing your dishes. Why? Because it's a thermostat. A thermostat is mutar on Shabbat, and you don't have any incoming water, and therefore we'll be fine. At some point, they realized that this is dangerous. It could be dangerous, and they created a new system. Now, when I grew up back in Iran, we had our it was a 60-gallon massive thing, and it would just before Shabbat we would turn off the the incoming water, and we would use hot water on Shabbat. Right? Amazing. But now in America you cannot do that because the system is a vacuum system. So for every drop to go out, a drop has to come in. So what's the problem? The problem is the hot water tank inside is a kli rishon, right? Kli rishon is mebashel. Every drop that comes in is mebushal, right? So forget about the hot water you're using. The problem is the cold water you're letting in. That's a problem, right? Now, technically speaking, if I am 50 feet away from this, and I'm not there, right? I open the water, and now through grama, koch, kocho, some cold water comes in, and I don't necessarily care about it. Now, that becomes very tricky. Do I care about it? Do I not care about it, right? So this becomes a whole question, especially in apartment buildings, that there's so many people using this. It's system, there the system also is a little bit more sophisticated, the system of the central water heater of the apartment buildings. So that becomes a whole question whether or not is mutar. When is mutar? If it's mutar, which again, at some point we'll discuss when we talk about the halachot of grama and bishul, but nevertheless, when it comes to the Gabei 3a, over here when there's multiple sfekot and you don't care about it, and it's grama and not direct and kocho, then it would be mutar. Now there are those who are machmir on this, but again, nevertheless, for our halachic purposes, the basic ikar hadin halacha is that's mutar. If you see someone doing that, you have to yell at them. Mutar lishpoch Shabbat meraglaim. Or actually, if you have one of these like baby potties, right? You're training your kids, potty training your kids, and some urine you want to pour out in the yard, or a person that's stuck somewhere, in a jungle, in an outdoor area without bathroom, is it mutar to urinate on grass on plantation or not? So the halacha is mutar. Mutar to do it on asavim, on plantations, mipenesh meraglaim azimhim, because Chazal considered meraglaim strong enough that it's more damage than benefit, and therefore it's mutar to do it. It's not considered zriya. It's not considered a tolada of zorea. It's mutar. V'chen mutar lishpoch yayin al azraim. Same is with wine. If you pour wine, right? Imagine someone brought you yayin nesech, and you want to just get it out of your sight. Not be michshol to leave it over there. If you have yayin nesech, you want to pour it out. Like, can I pour it out on the thing? Well, if you don't like your plants that are growing there, then you'll be killing two birds with one stone, because it's soref. It destroys. It does not necessarily make them grow, and therefore it will be mutar. Lefi shayayin chazak v'karov lisrof et zaraim. It probably damages it more than it helps. Ve'enam kimo mashke mayim alazayim. And therefore, it's not it's not a Torah. That's not an extension of watering your plantation. It does not grow them, and therefore it would be mutar. Now, we're just going to stop here, Bezat Hashem, for today. But tomorrow we're going to discuss some of the halachot of people. This is actually very important for vegetarians. Right? We have a growing community of people who are not fully vegetarian, but they do have those foods. And part of what they do is they leave different grains in water for them to sprout, and then they eat them, right? Or someone that's Persian and wants to do sabzeh, right? For Eden Oruz, for the non-Jewish beginning of the year, right? If you ask all the shilos, and that's not considered darkei mori and all of that, imagine that's that. And now you want to do this, putting it in water on Shabbat, whether or not it's going to be considered zorea or not, is something that we're going to pick up Bezat Hashem in the next shiur. Hazaku Baruch.